What is up, people? EJ Stewart here, giving you guys our Young Justice episode recap and review. This is the final episode of the season finale of season 4, Young Justice Phantoms. This episode titled Death and Rebirth. Kendall is here joining us for this discussion. Shamari is also here via his audio, so we should have a very great conversation. I want to shout out people who may have tried to watch our other video. I know there was a pretty big technical glitch with Kendall's audio not being correct. We wanted to give you guys a correct finale, and we wanted to give you guys a true, two really good discussions so you can hear all of us. You know, I know perhaps I'm so used to muting Kendall that I probably didn't mind not hearing from him for a little bit, but I know y'all haven't heard from him for a while, so I want to make sure you can hear Kendall loud and clear. So I get to Kendall first as he joins us here. What were your initial thoughts on this major finale we had last week?
Yeah. No, I mean, look, it's glad to be back on the show. It's been a minute talking Young Justice on here, but well, it hasn't been that long, but yeah, been a minute.
Yeah, we did just do this, but yes, first time they're hearing you talk about it, even since before last week.
Yeah, for a long time. So yeah, I've been a huge fan of this, second half, this latter half of the season. I think Greg Weisman has done a great job with the back nine, of this season. But this episode, this finale, it had a lot to sort of live up to with where last week's episode ended, and I thought it lived up to everything that they set up. So excited to dive into it in more detail.
All right, Sham joins us on the podcast and the YouTube video as well. Sham, always good to have you. What were your thoughts on this episode of Young Justice Phantoms, Death and Rebirth, and how they finished the final arc of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm, of course, glad to be here as always, and it was a very strong finish. They ran through the finish line. It was a great ending. I really don't have many negative things to say about it. It was really good. It was really, really good. A lot of even more cliffhangers for next season. Cross my fingers, we're getting another season. But I had a lot of positive feelings about it. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, I do as well, man. I do as well. This was a really emotional ride. I told you guys before we shot the first one, and during the last video we shot that was messed up, and I'll tell you guys again. I actually got emotional watching this episode. This episode had everything from the dramatic beginning, which was the fight in Metropolis, the fight at Planet Square, and then moving that from that and to the wedding of Connor and McGann. It was a lot. It was a lot for me. And I think being able to see these characters grow the way they have, and to see them finally get this truly happy ending. It's very much these characters. We know how close Connor and McGann have been pretty much since day one, and seeing how much they've literally gone through to get to this point. It was a lot. It was a lot for me. I certainly loved watching every bit of it, but I did get emotional. Thank God I wasn't emotional for the fact that Nightwing was gone or anything like that. That was a major question. I know Kendall had thought that when I told him that this was an emotional episode for me, that he thought, oh God, Nightwing must have not have made it. But we found out very early on that our boy Nightwing did indeed make it. So this episode had pretty much all you could ask for, really. And then the cliffhanger that you got at the end, man. If there's any message to HBO, to DC, to say, hey, I think you guys want to give us another season because the fans are going to be locked in to see what we do, I think the final images we got from this season would certainly do that. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about this episode. So let's begin what happened at the fortress. Well, actually, let's actually, before we get to the fortress, let's get to Planet Square. So we saw what happened last time with all the Kryptonians pulling up. Superman, who's been kryptonite poisoned, is a non-factor at this point, and Zod has made the order for Superboy with the new Zod encrusted those costume to say, hey, it is time for you to do what you've been trained to do. Get rid of the L's once and for all. Kill the Superman as we begin our era of dominance here on Earth. Kendall, I'll give it to you first. Did you think Connor was going to kill Kal-El in that moment in time?
That one was not maybe as convincing as Nightwing.
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, I was a little more convinced. Oh, I guess Nightwing is dead. Based off of like you said, our conversations. Um, but I still, did not. Normally in a situation like that with a show like this and a character like Superman, I'm not even gonna blink. I'm gonna be like, yeah, he's fine. Just tell me tell me how he's gonna get out of it. I wasn't 100% convinced that Superman was going to survive. That there was a pinch of salt that made me think maybe they're actually just going to go through with it, and this is like some sort of elseworld, alternate universe where Superboy kills Superman. Like we've already gone down some pretty dark paths. I mean, at that point, I thought Nightwing was already dead, so I was like, I mean, this is just going to be a pretty traumatic episode, um, but it wasn't shocking. I just wasn't sure how he's gonna get out of it, um, because we're talking about a character in Superboy that's already, he'd already gone through a lot in this season.
For sure.
So to go through with that would have been, I think, probably a little bit overboard. So I wasn't as convinced that he was gonna actually do that, um, as I was with some other cliffhangers that they left us off with last week.
I'll go to Sham as well. Sham, how did you feel about the decision to not have Connor kill Superboy? And we see as Connor is kind of met with this moment, he goes through all the memory he's had of his interactions with Clark, and we see how much, despite he had all those thoughts of being programmed to kill Superman, and how that has been his mission since he was built in Cadmus, that those memories that he built with Clark and the bond that they created would not allow him to kill him, which is ironic considering, as we've talked about throughout this season, that their relationship in the beginning was very icy. Superman really wanted no part of Connor. It was very much a Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers type of relationship. But you see how much they've grown over time, and they show that through that montage. And then we saw it when Clark was grieving Connor's death, how much it had bothered him and how hurt he was by it. So what did you make of their decision not to have him go through with it, and did you like how they set that up?
I did. Yeah. I mean, I like how they set it up, but he kind of left you wondering, is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? I didn't really have any doubt that he would not do it. That just felt, and this show has taken plenty of very dark turns, but that just felt like a little overboard. It would feel like being edgy for the sake of like being edgy. So,
Yeah.
this isn't your mom and pop's Justice League. This isn't
Right.
the Super Friends, the Superman, Superboy kills Superman. It's just a bit too much. Just a bit too much. Not even necessarily Superman dying, because I mean Superman's died. Doomsday's killed Superman a billion times, but Superboy kills Superman like this. It's like no, I didn't. I just didn't think that was gonna happen. I thought there was somehow, some way, someone was either gonna get through to him or he was gonna realize or something along those lines. So I thought it was a suspenseful moment for sure. I kind of liked how it resolved, and I like how you realize he's family and all that stuff. So I thought it was a cool moment.
Yeah, I thought it was a cool moment as well. I was happy that they decided not to go through with it, and like I said, I think allowing for Connor to remember that bond. Like, it was interesting how for a lot of this time we expected Connor's relationship with McGann to be the one that kind of stops him from doing anything terrible. And, McGann does stop him from, beating the crap out of Aquaman. But, to see here that also his relationship with Clark would not allow him to at the very least kill Superman in that moment in time, despite all the training he had got from the brainwashing that he had gotten from Zod. I thought that was very important, and I did like how they did set that up. So once that happens, we kind of end up going, well, before we end up learning that happened later, but before that, we actually go back to the fortress where we're trying to figure out what's the deal with all those characters, and we learn that Nightwing is actually, as we noted earlier, not dead. That he had survived. That he had played a trick on Lord Zod, who had thought that he had killed him by slowing the heartbeat, and using an old wrestling trick, which we know as wrestling fans, where a wrestler, when they want to bleed, they blade themselves. Nightwing, showing that he essentially did that to fool Zod. So our boy Nightwing was safe, not dead or anything like that. He basically needed a regroup, which we all saw, because we saw how badly outgunned he was, and he knew he was badly outgunned. So he made a smart decision to decide to pull back. And then we learned that McGann also had used a ruse to make them think that there was not that all those characters had died. Like, I didn't even realize that when we watched it, that when Bioship had crashed after Embers's attack, that when all those heroes was down and stuff, she actually made it to make it appear they all died except for Superman, and that was actually not the case. So everybody was good, and this was going to be the regroup before they all went back into with the Planet Square to square off with Zod. I'll go to Sham here. How did you feel about the decision not to kill off Nightwing? How did you feel about the swerve that they did with that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the kind of subterfuge there was good. Of course, I like the decision not to kill Nightwing. I mean, this is, I guess, technically a Nightwing arc, and so I just thought that was a good decision. And I, like you, I also didn't even really notice that with necessarily the amount of carnage when it comes to Bioships crashing. But I thought how they explained everything and how all that worked out, I thought it was really cool. Another kind of moment where the heroes kind of outsmart the villains, and it's almost like a double turn where you're like, oh my god, they really were alive and blah blah blah. So it was really good. It was a really really cool moment. I like the reunion, and I like the action that followed that.
So Ken, let's talk about that action. So once Connor decides, hey, I'm not gonna kill Superman. Lord Zod basically is like, see, I've been trying to tell you all along, you can't trust these damn Kryptonians. You should have killed them to begin with. And Zod's like, oh man, I guess you're right. I guess I should have killed them.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's too late, because all the heroes then pull up on Metropolis, in Metropolis at Planet Square, and then you have kind of the showdown of all showdowns, where you got the whole team and against basically Zod's crew that he had brought over to Metropolis. How did you like how the fight scene squared off? I mean, you kind of got to see some of the old school kind of strategic work by the team in terms of Nightwing kind of telling people who should be fighting who and what he needed from people. I love the pep talk he kind of gave them McGann, saying, listen, I need the demi-goddess. I don't need the, rainbow and cupcakes McGann. I need Miss Martian. I need the one that's ready to take anybody out for the sake of protecting her family. How did you feel about how this fight scene shook out? I thought it was a banger.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I thought that there was a lot of interesting stuff in that fight. You mentioned Miss Martian, that her role in this was very interesting, because, like you mentioned, Nightwing had to have that conversation, and it sort of spoke to sort of her Dark Phoenix moment, or her Scarlet Witch moment, where clearly she's the strongest member of this team that we've followed since the beginning, but we don't necessarily see that very often, because she, as they mentioned, she suppresses a lot of that power that she has, and
yeah.
So it was interesting to see her sort of unleash it on these villains, and it felt like we only got like a taste. Remind me also, maybe like Raven and Teen Titans is another one. And I feel like typically when that story is told, where you have this moment where that character's got to unleash whatever's inside them, typically there's ramifications long term. It's the beginning of something. We'll see if that is the case, or if this was just a one-time thing, and then she'll be able to move on from it. But again, typically when that story is told, it's something that lingers, as we saw with Scarlet Witch, as we've seen with Phoenix. So we'll see if that's something that happens with her down the line.
And Sham, when you think about it, it's like we have kind of gone through this thing with McGann, because I think it was season 2 when Connor was actually the one saying, "Hey, like, you're basically cyclically, what's the word? Like, what's the thing they do with the psycho, the psycho treatment they do? Lobotomizing. That's what it was. I can remember. I don't know why I can think of the word. You're psychically lobotomizing, our enemies, and okay, you're not killing them, but that's, pretty bad, like almost just as bad. So we've seen McGann have to struggle with this, and she's always like, I'm helping the team with this. So it was interesting to see her kind of have to tap into that aspect, but then also she's the one who finally really truly brings back Connor. And when she is able to get into his head and make him remember that he's not a killer, that he's not a monster, that he's not just a Cadmus goon, and that he has this great life and this great upbringing that he's had since being part of this team. That is when he joins the fight and helps them fend off Team Zod. So how did you feel necessarily both also about McGann's role in this fight and how she brought Connor back?
I thought it made sense. You kind of thought she would have to be the one to do it. He was so far gone, and it was a good moment. It was a touching moment, and it also like we're all saying, kind of showed how powerful she is and what she's able to do. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a nice touching moment, and we finally get the Connor back that we've been wanting to see since he was presumed dead. So I thought it was good.
Yeah, I thought it was good as well, and I thought it was again great to see the team back in action. Calling out maneuvers in hopes of defeating the Zods. I thought it was great to see our first real fight between Superman and General Zod. Like, it's crazy to think, even though this is a Superman that we've been introduced to for more than 10 years now, and that we know has been through several battles and stuff, and he's been around the block a little bit. This is the first time he has encountered General Zod, one of his primary villains. It was quite the scene to see, but this was great. I mean, this was a really great fight scene, and to see the team get the upper hand. I think it's funny. I felt like earlier in the season, I think a couple episodes ago, Shamari, I talked about how I felt like the team was kind of so ahead of the curve with everybody that this season needed to kind of show them kind of down bad a little bit. And I think we got that. I think for a lot of this season, we got to see them kind of be behind the 8 ball. They didn't know what was going on with Connor. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And Laura's, once we see Laura's eye comes into the picture, he's able to continue to kind of get the one up on them. I think they had earned this moment to finally come out on top. And I thought it was smart for them as well to note that, hey, the Kryptonians, they're not at their full strength with their powers, because they haven't been exposed to the Earth's sun for long enough to reach those powers. So I thought it made sense for the team to get the win, but I think also kind of explaining some of the backstory behind it, I thought was important as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I thought explaining the backstory is important. The Zods coming through the portal and just the fight in general, I thought was just extremely well done. I thought the action, like you said, in the first half of this episode, extremely well done. The Zods, everything that they were able to do. Of course, Mal Alpha, who is still, doing crazy stuff in this fight. And of course, the Kaiserthal and everything that it was just really cool seeing everything come together with Zatanna and Rocket and everybody coming in to join this scrap. I mean, it was just a well-told story leading to this kind of epic conclusion, and I just enjoyed every minute of it.
So Kendall, how'd you feel about seeing the heroes come out on top here? I think seeing them be able to send them back into the what's the name, and boy, like I said, McGann really threw her weight around. I mean, she took out Emerald Empress. She took out she did some damage against Laura's eye before he squares up against Superboy, and then she also takes out her brother. And I thought it was crazy kind of scene. First of all, my Alpha Faak, I mean, he was giving out work. I mean, he was the MVP of his squad despite taking the L here. He's one of them guys where you might have to give him the Finals MVP despite losing the series, because he was doing work. I mean, he was fighting multiple people, fighting Danny in the Kaiser Thrall and fighting the people who are actually, there trying to scrap with him. But once McGann showed up, that's when it was over. And then, McGann's final words when sending him to Phantom Zone was, "I know that you wanted Connor dead." And it was kind of a, really dark and kind of crazy moment to think. We know how much McGann and her brother kind of didn't get along, but I think McGann always had a soft spot for him and thought he was misguided. That also felt like the moment where any chance of him being redeemed or them kind of coming together was done because of how she was able to read his mind and know what he felt about Connor's disappearance.
Yes. Yeah, no, I mean that whole interaction was interesting. I mean, again, it was I mean, yeah, first of all, you're right about Malafat. I think really his whole role this entire season, he's been very vital to everything that they've done with everything Lord Zod was trying to plan. If he was not around, none of it would have been able to get done.
Not at all.
But yeah, no, I thought that those last interactions at Planet Square were interesting. I mean the battle between the Kryptonians, the sort of tag team match that we saw between Lord Zod and General Drew Zod versus Superboy and Superman was really interesting. Seeing, I even thought, Impulse like leaving and then coming back at the end of with like the Justice League was funny. The funny.
Yeah.
Because like it was a weird like I'll be right back, and it didn't have much of an impact, but it was just like sort of like it was functional. It would make sense why he would try and bring the entire Justice League, seeing what they were going up against. So, no, I thought there were a lot of good moments in there. And it was an interesting episode because that was 10 15 minutes of it,
Yeah. First of all, before I get to that, Sham, did you pick up how Kendall called Bart Impulse instead of Kid Flash? I think he's still...
Yes.
Kendall still only acknowledges one true Kid Flash, and that being Wally West.
That's still a question mark for a lot of
Bart
people.
Allen.
It's still a question mark for a lot of people. It's still a question mark after the end of this episode. A lot of Kid Flash truthers. I know Kendall's a Kid Flash truther. It's like, we don't know what happened. He'll be back. He's gonna come back. I mean, we'll see. We'll see if Wally comes back. I think it'd be a good twist if he did come back. But I mean, Connor came back, and you see Connor come back, and you're like, why can't Wally come back? So I mean, you gotta see what happens.
So I mentioned before how this was a very emotional episode for me. Like I said, it was done extremely well. So the heroes, they are victorious. They get to see the sunrise as they kind of bask in their glory. Rocket shows up and helps in this fight, and we'll get to Rocket in a little bit. But as Kendall said, I expected this fight to be way more of this episode. But like I said, this season clearly wanted to give the people a true happy ending, which is unlike what we got really last year, if you think about it. Because remember, last year's season ended with, Geoforce, killing that dude. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like melting that dude, and him, officially. I don't want to say turning evil because he's not necessarily evil, but he's no longer with the team. He's left the Outsiders and everything, and we got to see a little bit what he's been doing this season. Now he's the king of Markovia, but the scene shifts now to a wedding. And that is where we get to see McGann and Connor get their wedding, and we get to see a pretty incredible collection. I really like just seeing this collection of heroes. It kind of was, to me, like a great love letter just to like how much this world has been built, or this universe really has been built on Earth 16 and Universe 16, with all the characters that they've introduced over the last, 4 seasons plus the comics. This was everybody. I mean, anybody pretty much that you've seen that is on good terms with the team and good terms with the Justice League, they do show up. It was interesting to me, something we didn't mention last time we tried to record this, that Brion was not there for this, which shows that he's still very much on the outskirts of this. But yeah, this was a pretty big scene here, the wedding scene, and before we even got to that, what was really touching for me was seeing Clark and Lois you see Lois there at the wedding, try to explain to young Jonathan, that their his uncle was alive. First of all, it was a very cute kid. The way he draw him, his voice, everything, it all works. But like, I didn't even think of like that even being a thing to have to think about. Like, like this is a very young boy, and of course Lois and Clark are used to dealing with losses. Maybe not anything this bad, but in the field that they're in, they're used to dealing with losses. But how do you explain to someone who's 4 or 5 years old, hey, that guy that died that you love dearly, well, he's alive. And I thought that even though Jonathan takes it very well, I thought it was thoughtful to at least have them have that conversation and understand that is not a normal thing and could be also very traumatic for someone so young. But seeing him one get to see the message from McGann and Connor for the first time, realizing that he's alive, it shows you that they didn't immediately tell him. They waited a couple of days or weeks before telling him that he's alive. And then seeing him at the wedding, he was a ring bearer for this wedding, which I thought was really sweet. I also noted that his grandpa is still alive in this world, so that means that Jonathan Kent the first gets to see Jonathan Kent the second grow up. So many times when you see Jonathan Kent, he's not born when Grandpa or Pa Kent is around. So I thought even that was cool. So this was I thought a whole overall touching scene. Sham, how did you feel about how they executed the wedding?
I thought it was great. Like you said, touching scene. Everybody was there. Even Dylan was there. Icicle Jr. was there.
Shout out to Icicle Jr.
Shout out to Icicle Jr. A lot of kind of shady characters there, but also people that you would expect to be there. Both of the bio ships, I believe, were also there. Everybody was there. You had the Martian family. Of course, Miss Martian's family was there. Sister, parents. It was a very, very, just everybody. So yeah, it was a good scene, touching scene. Seeing everybody there and getting kind of the backstory for setting up maybe future storylines and things at the same time as well. So I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I thought all of this was really well executed. The lighting, the artwork was just really beautiful. It was funny seeing which characters, as Kendall noted, which characters decided to show up in costume, full mask on and everything. Which characters just showed up as themselves. I thought it was even cool to see just who the best men were and who the bridesmaids were. There was a lot of little nuggets to take from a little bit from this whole entire gathering. One of them was what to do with the Kryptonians, Kendall, and there's this long conversation that included Aqualad or Aquaman rather, and Connor and Clark and the Legion. Chameleon Boy is like, look, man, I know that those people did their time and all, but as you guys see now, they're crazy Kryptonians and they destroyed my world, so I don't think you want to let those guys out. And then you have Clark and super Aquaman trying to say, well, we gotta do something, and that's where I thought Superman had the interesting idea of saying, hey, why don't you just put them on on the planet with the red sun, Trombus, where they could try to see if they can build their own world how they like, but they won't be powered in any way, and we won't have to deal with them. One of the things we learned during this wedding scene, Kendall, is that the people that they sent to the Phantom Zone are no longer there. And they are no longer there because this man, Vandal Savage, has already pulled up and snagged everyone that was in there. But he's left one Kryptonian for someone else who we'll get to in a second. But how about this aspect of the wedding, Kendall, and learning this part from the Savage team? We learned a lot about Vandal Savage in this season, but he doesn't really do a lot in this season. This is the first major step he makes, and it's the only major step he makes in this season. How did you feel about the development that he is now? He went to Warworld, insanely enough, with the help of Clarion. Went to Warworld, took Warworld to the Phantom Zone, snatched up all the Kryptonians, and then brought them to wherever he's going next. How did you feel about how they set that up?
Yeah, man. I mean, first of all, I thought that I agree with you guys that the wedding scene was very interesting. Like you said, sort of like who's who or where's Waldo, sort of Young Justice characters. But yeah, and then I thought what was great about it, as sort of a farewell scene or an epilogue scene is how they've infused these interesting story nuggets and cliffhangers in between each scene. And like you said, this one, definitely surprising, but it makes sense. It's probably one of the bigger, it's funny because, in their mind, and we'll talk about, Lord Zod, but in their mind, the Legion thought, well, this wasn't much of a win because Lord Zod got escaped with the ship, which they don't have to worry about him, which we'll talk about. But and they're, but the reason the war isn't over is not because Lord Zod, it's because the rest of the Kryptonians got out.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're right to feel uneasy about their future, but it's not because Lord Zod's running around in the space time continuum. So yeah, no, it's certainly interesting. I mean, the light. You never know what they've got sort of cooking up their sleeve.
Yeah.
It's not good, but there's a dangerous amount of Kryptonians to just have at your disposal.
Oh yeah.
Considering they do not have as many as them. Justice. So
yeah.
And we saw the difficulties that they had dealing with them at half strength. So it'll be interesting to see where the long game is for the light.
Yeah, it's funny, Shamrock Kendall points that out, how like the team and the Justice League, like they're like, yo man, there's this one Kryptonian that got away, and how are we gonna stop that guy? Like he's clearly very conniving and very powerful. And it's like, well, actually that guy you don't have to worry about, but there's like at least dozens more or hundreds more that are now in the possession of your arch nemesis, the Light, and and Vandal Savage. Definitely, might be it was a very bright day that day for the Justice League and the team, but maybe some dark days looming because of that. One of the other things I wanted to note, and Kendall could chime in as well, Sham, was I thought there was a very interesting conversation that may have went over some people's heads regarding Black Canary. So at the meeting, Black Canary is sitting there and she's talking about, oh well, we've seen the mental health issues that various people have had to deal with, particularly Beast Boy this season, which we see Gar and Perdita, who was at the wedding, are not able to. They're able to reconcile their beef, but they're not able to reconcile as a couple. And she tells him that she's moved on. But Gar went through a bunch of mental health stuff. We've seen the team have to go to Dinah for counseling. There's various other people. Of course the not the runaways. The kids that were trafficked that they're doing at the youth center that they're talking to the meta youth center, and she's like, we need something just for everybody, not even just the youth center. We need something for the outsider. We need something for the Justice League. We need something for just all power people who can come in and help. And she uses the word sanctuary. And if you're familiar with that word and what it means to the DC universe, there's a comic called Heroes in Crisis, which is essentially, on one side, it's a Wally West story. So for those looking to see any chance you'll get Wally West, this may be your chance. But on the flip side, it also is a mass killing story and a murder mystery in which Wally is actually the culprit. So Flash fans or Wally West fans may be excited that he may be coming back because they went through this route, but I'm not sure if that's the route you want to see them go. How do you feel, Sham, about them laying the tea leaves for Heroes in Crisis in this episode? And do you believe they will go with a story that dark, or do you think that maybe they only take a thread from that story, like Sanctuary, to continue and perhaps bring back Wally West, but maybe not have him, kill a bunch of heroes?
I think they could go dark. We've seen them do that before. So, I think it's possible. I think them bringing Wally back is possible. Especially after bringing, Connor back and of course, bringing Artemis back when we thought Artemis was dead for a hot minute.
And now Rocket.
And Rocket as well. We didn't know what happened with Rocket. She was just gone. But yeah, I certainly think it's possible. I think the likelihood of Wally coming back is raised, with that conversation. as for if he's really responsible for killing a bunch of Justice League, I think that's very possible too. I mean, they're not afraid to go down dark paths in this show, clearly. So I mean, I definitely think it's a possibility. Do I think it's likely? I mean, I don't know. That's a bit to bring him back and then have him like kill. He may kill some, but to have him kill like even most of the Justice League, I don't know. I don't know if they'll do all of that. But I mean, to be fair, of course, full disclosure, I didn't read the storyline, so I don't know exactly what happens. But I could definitely see them bringing him back, and maybe even taking a darker turn in that way.
Wow. So Kendall, you see, Shamari is not necessarily convinced that they won't maybe go that dark. Would you be surprised they went that dark in adopted Heroes in Crisis?
I mean, all this, it's like what we talk about with movies. It would only be a percentage of it. They're not going to do a full retelling, so they could they'll certainly have their own Young Justice spin on it if they did it. But I definitely feel like if you're talking about bringing Wally back, there is definitely a version of that story where you decide to bring him back and he's not a hero. We've seen plenty of Flash stories where Flash isn't. There's an evil version of the Flash. Obviously the Reverse Flash and Black Flash and Zoom and all these different versions. And,
yeah.
We saw in the show Savitar. Like you can do all this stuff where you have an evil version of Wally West that comes back. So that's something that is not, I guess, out of the realm of possibility. But I don't necessarily think that that's what they're going to do. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see as well. I would be surprised they did with that route, only because we've seen when they've had the chance to kind of take from dark storyline that they've kind of opted to do things differently. So like even learning how Barbara Gordon was paralyzed, like they didn't do Killing Joke, like that would have been really dark for I wouldn't call it a kid's show, especially at this point in time, but nonetheless, that's still they could have done it. Like by the time that they put Oracle in the wheelchair, it was already season 3, so they were already off of Cartoon Network. They decided no, it was an accident essentially. Well, not an accident. Well, it kind of was an accident, with Cassandra Cain, and that actually creates the bond with Oracle, and that leads her to Batman. That leads her to become Orphan, and that story gets told in that way. And I think in some ways it's more powerful, I think, for this show to take their own spin on something like that and do that. So, I mean, I think they can go various ways with that. I do want to make some other quick shout outs from this wedding before we get to the end. I want to shout out Brainy. Our guy Brainy showed up here, which was really cool to see. And they take back the Legion. The Legion, they don't stay for the wedding, and they don't tell Connor exactly why he was so important because they don't want to mess up the timeline. But they do say that, hey, the timeline must be restored because Brainy's here and he was able to come back. So shout out to Brainy. He does show up. I mentioned the interaction between Beast Boy and Perdita. That was I wouldn't call it a breakup because they're already broken up, but this was we're not getting back together scene that we had here. So it was a pretty, like I said, I think they did a good job with making the wedding, central to a lot of what was going on, but not necessarily everything. And then we had to learn about what happened with Rocket, because as I mentioned, Rocket does show up in that fight scene with the Time Sphere, and we're like, how did that happen? It looked like she was being collapsed by a boom tube. So like, how did she survive that? And she said it was actually by the help of Metron. Metron had come out of nowhere, and he gave me this Time Sphere and sent me right where I had to go. And I was able to help out, but too bad Lord Zod had jumped in there and took it away, and we don't know what happened to him. Well, we learned what happened to him, and it didn't end well for Lord Zod. So like I said, I was tight when I actually saw this transpire, because Lord Zod was the guy. If there's anybody that you want to see get taken out, is him. Like, this guy has been a scumbag pretty much. We saw him kill Tomar Ray. We saw him think that he killed Nightwing. He's been causing a lot of havoc. He's a punk, and I wanted to see him go. So when I saw him actually escape, they let him just run to the Time Sphere. I literally was like, yo, what the hell? Like, why did they let him do that? Now this guy's gonna be free. So I was already pissed off. But he gets in the time sphere and he realizes immediately that he actually doesn't have control of where he's going. And he's like, I don't have control. I don't know where we're going. And it turns out he's actually going back to Mars, the scene of the crime. He thinks he is there and he has the opportunity to once again try to kill Connor Kent. But as he learns very quickly, this was not going to end the way he thought, because the time sphere that he took immediately leaves him as soon as he gets out of it. You know, right as we see Phantom Girl from months ago trying to save Connor in that moment. We see the bomb that he had started off that was laced with that kryptonite explode, and Zod faces a very gruesome and deserved death. And what I loved about this scene was they revealed that the shadow that the heroes had saw earlier in the season that they thought was Connor's shadow was actually Zod's shadow, which is like a whole crazy mental twist of how they did that in terms of how they work with how time works. Sham, how did you feel about the Zod explanation? How Metron got his revenge after what Zod had put him through in his vault. What did you make of how that situation played out?
I thought it was, again, just great writing. You know, just how these things come full circle, and how these, you know, new gods characters are not to be trifled with. So, yeah, it was good. It was well told. Lord Zod got his comeuppance, I guess, so to speak. And you know, it was kind of just what had to happen. Which, I mean, of course, you know, there is another Lord Zod out there, with the Emerald Empress.
Yes.
So we don't know if this is the last we'll see of him, or there'll be another version of him, or not, or what the situation will be with that. But it just made sense. It made sense. It was kind of a crazy kind of story, but you know, that's what happens when you you know, you mess with time.
Indeed, it is. He got what he deserved. Metron, man. We want to talk about a guy with a. He didn't have. I mean, Lord Zod was going to be dangerous with a time sphere. Like, you know, obviously they would have kept their eyes on him. But like the way to kill him with such prejudice at the start was very much in line with the character. But man, like, wow, it's just a wild thing to see kind of transpire. I really enjoyed that death. That was definitely one of the highlights of this episode for sure. And man, shout out to Metron. Shout out to Metron for giving us what we indeed deserved. Lord Zod had to go, so I'm happy that did happen. Shamari does note that, you know, Ursa, as she's whisked away by the Emerald Eye, she realizes that she didn't realize, but she reveals that she's pregnant at the time with Lord Zod. But what I know about this part is that, remember, because General Zod is locked away in, well, he was in the Phantom Zone, but now he's with, you know, on War World with Vandal Savage. This Lord Zod is just not going to be the same person. He's not going to be the same person that was raised in the Phantom Zone or raised on Daxam with both of his parents there. Like, this is going to be an entirely different Zod, Lord Zod rather. So, to me, it opens up the opportunity for him to be anybody. He could end up being Val Zod, who ends up being the Black Superman. He could be another version of Lord Zod, who actually is a hero, or he could still be a villain. Who knows? But Kendall actually leaves a little bit of open opportunity for them to do anything with that Zod character if they so choose.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, that wouldn't be the first time I guess we've seen stories like that told, where you got the character where it's like, you know, my version of you is evil, but I guess now you're, you know, different upbringing and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, no, I that's possible. That's what they're doing. You know, is this? I guess in theory that would be him, as far as we know. But like you said, you know, how does this different upbringing affect him? I guess we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, no, I thought that whole deal with Metron was was interesting. You know, I'm still, I guess, just I guess trying to figure out what, like, I mean, we know obviously Metron doesn't like Lord God. That's already was already established. But I guess in theory, I guess Greg Weisman in his mind is like, I think they have plans for his character still Lord Zod, but it's just not that version. Like,
Yeah.
So that they could wipe him off because knowing that there's going to be another version probably coming down the pipe at some point.
Yeah, and just the way they were able to just establish kind of Metron's, elite level planning, his ability to strategize and literally, plan a man's death. Who does that and is able to do it so flawlessly?
Yeah.
Only Metron. Metron could be a jackass. I thought it was hilarious even hearing Orion kind of get Rocket to explain what happened. And he's like, that doesn't sound like Metron to just help out somebody in need for the sake of anything other than himself. And then, Rocket's like, oh, well, he said that this was going to be an interesting experiment for him to see through. And Orion's like, oh, yeah, that sounds like that asshole Metron that I know. Now that it all makes sense. Something, he had to be up to something. And he told him that it was some experiment, and I guess it was an experiment to see, can I kill a man exactly how I want to? Or not even kill a man. Can I lead a man to his death exactly how I want to? By his own hand. Because, at the end of the day, Lord Zod ends up killing himself, essentially. It's wild. I thought that was a really dope way to end this episode from that standpoint. So, like I said, a beautiful wedding. The vows were dope between Connor and McGann. Seeing them, finally get to this point was great. Like I said, I enjoyed seeing who were the bridesmaids, and you got to see. Shout out to B. We haven't seen Bumblebee in a long time, but she made it as a bridesmaid. She's there on the far right, along with Rocket, along with Zatanna, of course, Artemis, and her sister, Emery. So yeah, this was just again a really touching scene. Like, see Connor's groomsmen on the left there, Superman, Clark being the best man. Like to see that. Dick, Kaldor, Gar, and of course Will. Roy, actually. Sorry. No. Yes, Will. Will making it as a groomsman there. So yeah, just a really touching scene. Really glad that we got to see this all play out. And like I said, there's some things to look at for in the future that maybe wouldn't. It's a happy ending, but there's trouble around the corner, and we learned that through the post-credit scene. And guys, when I say this post-credit scene was epic, it was epic. Because we get ourselves back to Apocalypse. So we get the update on what's going on with Darkseid. And this has been really really slow burn. I forgot that Darkseid was the post-credit scene or the last scene in season 2, I believe. Or season 1 or season 2 of Young Justice. The scene that he has with Vandal Savage when they first introduced him. So this is a long time coming, but we still haven't seen him fully scrapped. But he is indeed still lurking in the winds, and he gets word that there has been a gift given to Apocalypse from Vandal Savage, and for one, the Furies are being rebuilt by Granny Goodness, among them Mary Marvel, who we know who's now going by the name Black Mary, and none other than Kara Zor-El herself, Supergirl, is revealed in this scene to be now a member of the Furies and a servant of Apocalypse and Darkseid. Sham, this was an OMG moment for sure. What did you make when you saw the new Furies with Black Mary and Kara Zor-El among them?
I mean, look, it's a crazy kind of mic drop kind of moment, So you're getting Supergirl, probably a character I would assume that has kind of been, you could say missing, I suppose.
Yeah, she's really the one young hero that we had not really dealt with for sure.
kind of an iconic young hero, someone
Yeah.
that's been on various young superhero DC teams, kind of a trademark young teenage DC hero. And we see now she's going to be introduced um, uh, as a part of Team Apocalypse, along with Black Mary, which that was also another kind of big shocker. We had
Yeah.
just seen her earlier in this season working with the heroes.
Yeah.
She gets kind of disgruntled at the end. You don't really know what's going to lead to what, but I guess it led to this very extreme, kind of outcome. So that'll be interesting to see as well. So this is a very, very, a very significant development, of
Oh
course.
yeah.
So it's gonna be exciting to see how that plays out next season, or hopefully we get it next season.
I tossed this to Kendall. How did you feel about seeing Supergirl introduced in this way in the show?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's interesting. I mean, this is not a character that I ever thought about, as in terms of what would the Young Justice version of Supergirl look like. I never, just completely forgot about it. But like you said, it certainly makes sense for her inclusion into this universe. She fits perfectly. I think there's a few other characters. Well, I mean, mostly characters like maybe like Teen Titans characters like Raven and Starfire that maybe
Right.
we haven't
Yeah.
seen yet.
Those are two big ones for sure.
But for the most part, she was one of the big ones that we hadn't seen yet, and and I feel like for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because they had the because of the show, or if they just felt like they had a plan but they hadn't gotten to it yet.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we hadn't seen this character, so it's interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how they sort of, because obviously at the end of the day, it's Supergirl. She's going to be a threat now, but eventually she's gonna turn good. I would assume, and how they tell that story will be interesting. And yeah, I mean the Mary Broomfield character. I mean, they sort of teased this, but they hadn't gone back to it. So I wasn't sure if that was something that they were going to play really long, and
Right.
not touch this season. But they were planting seeds that they were going to be ready to grow at some point, and here we are. So yeah, I mean it's an interesting post credit scene, and like you mentioned, I mean at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to this long game that they're playing with Darkseid. Is it something where Darkseid will he ever be an adversary for them, or is he just a behind the scenes figure? I mean, it's like Thanos in the MCU. At some point you're gonna fight Thanos, you would think, if you're gonna keep
Yeah.
showing him like this. So that'll be interesting for them to deal with.
Yeah, it's an interesting to juggle because Darkseid is so powerful. As much as we've seen the team grow, you just feel like if they ever came across Darkseid, he would obliterate them in 0.25 seconds. So, like, how do you either build your team up strong enough to where it makes sense where they could actually take on Darkseid, or does Darkseid never actually fight them? Does he fight the Justice League, or does he fight Superman and maybe Superboy? Like maybe it would be like a combination of the two as opposed to maybe fighting the actual team. And that is a tricky thing to deal with. But on the whole, Fury's deal, I mean, there's so many questions I have. Like I like how they wrap the Mary story because we end that mid post credit scene, a mid season post credit scene with Granny Goodness, basically talking up Mary and getting her to yell out Shazam and embrace her full power. So we saw that recruitment from there. We didn't know where it went, but now we see where that went, and we know her new moniker now is Black Mary, which is would be really cool to see. And then the Kara thing is interesting just because, like, she's been in the Phantom Zone all this time. Like, there's been various different stories about kind of Kara Zor-El, but a lot of them usually fall in the lines of, well, she was supposed to go to Earth first, but her ship got kind of taken off track, and maybe she went through the Phantom Zone, but she was in her ship. I get the impression that this is a Kara Zor-El who's actually been built like in the Phantom Zone. Like, so if that's the case, like, because she's a grown adult at this point, at least a young adult at this point. She still is embracing the House of L because she's wearing the House of L emblem. But like, what is a Kara Zor-El who grew up in the Phantom Zone? Like, what does that look like? How has that shaped her? Like, there are just a lot of questions that they can explore with this Kara character, and I want to see it, man. Like, I mean, there's, like I said, there's any pitch for them to say you need to give us another season. Like, that was the pitch right there. Like, I am so all in on being able to see another season of Young Justice that explores the story of Kara and Mary, and once again brings the story back to the apocalypse and light. We dealt a lot with Zod in this season, which I thought was a nice, switch up. I think bringing this back to kind of home base a little bit with what we've been building with since season 1, and that'd be a great place to go moving forward. But I think this is a good part to give scores here, guys. So I'll go to Kendall first. What are you going to give Young Justice out of 10 this episode?
Out of 10, I'll go 9 out of 10. I thought it was a good episode, very good episode. I mean, got a lot of action in the first half, and I enjoyed the happy ending. It wasn't super like wasn't like super emotional, but it was a happy ending, and we didn't have to see anybody die. Typically end of the season, you're like, so there's gonna be a main character that gets killed off, and that didn't happen. But they decided to end it in a different way, and I enjoyed it because this season, the whole season's been about Superboy dying, and it's been an emotional, traumatic, arguably season. So we didn't need to go down that path in the finale. I think they did a good job of understanding that let's give the fans something that to be excited about, because there's been between that and between Beast Boy, whose arc kind of they sort of microwaved the last back nine.
This was a much darker season than last season.
Yes, yeah, and so
last season was violent, but it was very dark. It was not as dark as this.
Yeah, so it was smart for them, I think, to end how they did, and yeah, I enjoyed the episode.
Sham, I'll go to you here. What are you giving out of 10? Kendall goes 9. What's your number?
I gotta give it 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Wow.
Yeah, I gotta give it 10 out of 10.
Wow.
You gave me everything I wanted. Give me everything I wanted. I'm honest. I'm not gonna say, oh well, could have done it. I have no complaints. I don't have any complaints. Plenty of cliffhangers, a lot of action. Everybody knows I love the action. The action was great. The twists were great. The kind of backstories, explaining how everyone got to where they were, was great. Very well written. A lot of revelations. And we even got a lot of icing on the cake at the end. Cliffhangers at the end. We don't know where this one's going. We don't know what's going to happen to this person here, that person there. So it was just a really, really, really well done episode as a whole. So I would give it a 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Wow, Shamari coming in hot there. Okay, for me, I'm going to go 9.5. This was a stellar episode, like I said, on the edge of my seat during the action. I was, getting in tears several times in this episode. From, Connor and Clark coming together to stop the Zods, to Jonathan being, first being told that Connor's actually alive, to the wedding itself. Like, this was just an absolute joyride. It was an emotional ride, but it was a joyride for a lot of good reasons, and a lot of it was because you got to see the heroes come through and kind of get what they want in the end. And then, like I said, the cliffhangers that they hang up on. Zod's going to be a factor in the future because of how Vandal Savage is waiting in the cut now with all those Kryptonians. And, of course, like I said before, we now know what's going to happen with Kara now with Darkseid. I mean, we've seen so many stories of, Superman. What happened to Superman got corrupted by Darkseid. And, I know that was a lot of what Zack Snyder wanted to do with his, his Justice League story that he was doing. But, here you got, Greg Berlanti, not Greg Berlanti, Jesus, Wiseman, and Vietti and the crew trying to do this with Supergirl. Really fascinating stuff. Like I said, it makes for what should be an epic new season if they do get a new season. We're hoping to get that. I want to make sure you guys know as well that a new comic is coming out. Actually, it's out if you guys have the DC Universe app or whatever. I think DC Universe Infinite, I think it's called.
Yep.
Issue 1 of Young Justice Targets is out on the DC Universe Infinite app. If you guys are subscribed to that, it's already out. It's a continuation of this season. So if you're not, you feel like I have not seen enough of YJ yet. I need to learn more and read more and know more about this universe. The story does continue in the comics. So again, you can follow that. The DC Universe Infinite app is already out. I think it comes out in stores and on the other general apps in July, I believe. So Young Justice season 4 is done, but there's more story to be told. So this is not the complete end of everything. But if I'm gonna put my 2 cents in, HBO Max, renew Young Justice. It's what we all want. It's what we all deserve. This is an epic season, an epic series. It ended a big season with an epic finale that was worthy of it. This deserves a renewal, and we need to get another season of Young Justice. But that's going to do it for this edition of our Young Justice episode recap and review. I want to thank Kendall for joining us. I want to thank Sham for joining us. I want to thank the viewers who have checked this out for all these weeks. I mean, this is the first time we're able to do this long of a show where we recap and review every single episode. It was a joyride. I think if there was any show I would want to do this with, this is absolutely the one. So I was really happy that we got to do this. I was really happy to interact with the viewers who have commented. Of course, if you have any thoughts on this episode, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section. Hope you guys give us a like. And, of course, subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media, for more superhero and more sports and Star Wars content. But that is going to do it for now. I want to thank, again, my guys, Kendall and Shamari. Thank you guys for checking us out. For Kendall, for Shamari, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.